It is a beautiful and snowy day, so why not talk about court cases? All right, so there's a lot happening about free speech and Title IX protections happening across the country as it relates to transgender students, and it's popping up in Ohio right now. So I'm Dr. Kara, I'm a school psychologist, and we're going to talk about the interaction between free speech rights and kids' rights. So in Ohio, a teacher was felt like they had to resign because they were dead naming two students in their class, and principals and other school staff were telling them that they couldn't do this. The teacher claimed that they have a Christian faith and therefore they cannot be involved in the social transition of transgender individuals. The school met with them multiple times to say, stop dead naming the students. The students were going to their counselor saying that they were getting dead named and weren't having their appropriate pronouns used. And the school didn't offer any other resolutions to this problem, according to the teacher's attorneys. And the teacher felt like they were being forced to resign. So they went to an appeals court afterwards, after the initial decision was made, and now the teacher is getting $450,000 settlement because they said that it was an infringement on free speech, and the attorneys made a big deal about saying that this was compelled speech. This has actually happened before in Ohio. This is not new to us. In 2018, a Shawnee State professor, my alma mater, won an appeal for the same type of case. The student in their class had transitioned, and they had a name that they preferred to be called by. And the professor in question refused to call them by their name, called them sir, called them Mr. last name when referring to the student who was a transgender woman. The student talked to the administration of the school. The teacher got reprimanded, and the professor sued them. Eventually, won in appeals court because the appeals court said that this was protected First Amendment speech, especially on religious grounds. The professors now awarded $400,000. Again, this was in 2018. So this is kind of a pattern in Ohio of this dead naming and not using the pronouns of transgender individuals. Some of you out there will be saying, well, that's terrible. We shouldn't be doing that. And some of you will be like, it's First Amendment rights. So what's the deal? So let's talk about the deal. In this case, I want to talk about two things: harassment and discrimination. So there are protected classes in the United States. If you discriminate on based on the category, that's not allowable, and harassment is one of those forms of discrimination. I'm going to start with harassment. So we can look at other rules, facts from Department of Education about this, of what's harassment in schools, and then we'll look at larger what the Justice Department says about discrimination. So according to a fact sheet by the United States Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights, this is on race and nationality-based harassment. Harassing conduct is unwelcome conduct that may include verbal abuse, graphic or written statements, physical assault, or other conduct that may be threatening, harmful, or humiliating. I think that part's really important in this case, because the teacher wasn't, verbally abusing the students. They weren't physically assaulting the students, but they were doing something that was pointing that student out to the class in a way that was maybe humiliating to the student based on their transgender identity. Now, we also have disability status as a protected category, and Department of Education says that teachers can't create hostile environments, but a hostile environment may exist even if there's no tangible effect on the student, where the harassment is serious enough to adversely affect the student's ability to participate in or benefit from the educational program. So, say that a transgender student doesn't ever want to raise their hand to answer questions in a class and engage in the class content because they know the teacher will dead name them. That might be an adverse effect based on participation in harassment. So these are other protected classes that mean that we can't use harassment to discriminate. Are transgender individuals another protected class? Well, according to the United States Department of Justice in 2024, they said, indeed, in the months following the Bostock decision, several federal courts have reached the same conclusion as to Title IX, holding that Title IX protects transgender students from discrimination on the basis of gender identity. And you might be thinking, well, that's new. I thought it was only sex-based discrimination that was protected in Title IX. And, a lot of people think that. But in 2015, the Department of Justice put out information on an ongoing case called Gigi versus Gloucester? Gigi v. Gloucester. It'll be right here. County School Board and against the board. There's a child child's case against the board because they were not allowed to use the bathrooms that were matching to their gender identity, and the parents thought that this was discriminatory. And the Department of Justice said, yeah, they would probably have a really good case here to say that this is Title IX discrimination based on gender identity. So the Department of Justice put out a statement then, a decade ago almost, that transgender students would be protected. And you might say, well, I thought it was only based on sex and your actual sex. Like, I thought that's what that meant. But even in 1988, in Price Waterhouse v. Hopkins, the Supreme Court rejected the notion that sex only encompasses one's biological status and also included discrimination or differential treatment based on your conformity to social gender expectations, based on your gender expression. In this case, a woman was rejected for a promotion because she wasn't expressing enough femininity, I guess, from her job or her bosses, and she won that case. So what gives? Well, first off, the Shawnee State case was in 2018. It was before the actual decision to formally put Title IX protections for transgender individuals. So that's out. So what about this 2024 case? This appeal in 2024, couldn't the school just claim that they were protecting students based on Title IX harassment? And you would be correct, except for a judge blocked this rule from going into effect in August of 2024, including like half the states in the United States, including Ohio. So this rule just isn't in effect right now. But I wanted to just push on this idea of free speech. Free speech is great. It is very helpful for our country to exist as it is and exist as a free nation. However, school staff have limits on their free speech, as we've seen in the harassment and discrimination laws and rules. So, for example, a teacher cannot call a student an offensive name based on their race or disability. That's a limit on free speech. If a teacher believes that creationism is the real truth and evolution is not true and shouldn't be taught, the school can compel them to teach evolution and not teach creationism. That is a compelled speech and denial of religious freedom. And that it was decided in this court case. So we can compel teachers to teach things, and we can say that you're not allowed to call students whatever you'd like. And, I think if we kind of pull this idea out a little bit further, we can see how ridiculous it would be. Like, imagine a student socially transitioned in third grade. The teacher in question in the first case was a high school teacher. So this child will say they transitioned in the third grade. They've been using another name. They've been called Cassie since the third grade. Everyone in the community knows them as Cassie. Their parents call them Cassie. The kids in the band with them call them Cassie. Every other teacher has called them Cassie. And then they get to the 10th grade with this teacher, and the teacher's like, Mark, is Mark here? And the student is just supposed to answer to a name they haven't used in 7 years. Imagine how embarrassing that is for that child who has been living as Cassie for like 7 years. And this teacher just keeps calling them Mark. Imagine how humiliating that would be, how distracting that would be, how much you wouldn't want to be in that person's classroom, how much you wouldn't want to participate if you were in that situation. But if we think about what this allows for, we can see how it's discriminatory, how it's harassing, how it would make those kids not want to participate in that class, not want to be involved with that teacher. So once this limit is passed, once the judges decide if this rule is acceptable or not, I think we might see this change. But for now, and especially in Ohio where this is still active, teachers can dead name students, and they can do so in a way that is harmful to kids. So don't think teachers should be the ones who get to say what a kid's name is. I think of the big parents' rights movement. If a parent doesn't have the right to have their child called what they wish to be called, what rights do parents have? That this is just inappropriate for schools. It's not protected First Amendment speech, I don't think. It's not helpful to the child, and it takes away the parents' rights to say what their child's name is. So overall, I just think this isn't going to last as an avenue for free speech. Anyway, if you're watching me here, I am Dr. Kara, and if you're on my YouTube, I have a TikTok. Go check it out. And if you're on TikTok, I have a YouTube. Go check it out.